Hello, I'd like to welcome you to this video Introduction to Knald. During this video I'm going to show you all the basic features of Knald and what all the controls do. The first thing that I want to show you is the interface, which is what you see here. We've got the file menu here where you can load normal derivative, load height, load colour and export your maps. We've got 6 tabs here which show the various map types that Knald can generate. We've got the main, the export, the preferences and the info tabs. Most of your work will be done in the main tab. This is where all the controls for Knald are stored. We've got the export tab here which allows you to set up your export settings, which maps you'd like to export and the bit depth and format. We've got the preferences here which allows you to set up preferences which are persistent when you load Knald. We've got a prefix and suffix settings, 3D preview settings and miscellaneous, and then we've got the info tab here which gives information regarding your image and the OpenCL devices that you have in your system. The image information, it gives you unique value counts, which is really nice. And it also displays the a thumbnail of each channel. So you've got the RGB and then an alpha, and it'll give you a unique value count showing you how many unique values are in each channel. We've got image name, image type, height, width, bit depth, file format and file size here. And these are all populated once you load an image. The OpenCL device information will give you the information of any OpenCL compatible device you have in your system. So here I've got 2. I've got my CPU and I've got my GeForce GTX 560. We only got 2 asterisks. It shows that this is the one that's active in the system and being used by Knald. The groups that you see here, when you've got a little arrow like this, it means you can minimize and maximize and hide the group, and you can do this on any tab where this little icon shows, so you can minimize as you wish. Let's go a little bit into the export settings here. So we've got these 6 map types here. You check this little checkbox here depending on which map types you want to export. So currently it will export all 6 maps. This is the file format that you want to use. You've got a choice of TIFF, EXR, PNG or Targa. When you select one of these, it will automatically propagate the correct bit depth for the image format over to this field here. So if you select Targa, because Targa only supports 8-bit, then it will give you an 8-bit value and you won't be able to change anything other than that. If you go to EXR, for example, then you get a choice of a 16-bit or 32-bit float or integer. PNG supports 8-bit or 16-bit integer, and TIFF supports 8, 16 and 32-bit. I would recommend that people use TIFF and 16-bit where possible because you do get much better results using 16-bit. So what you can do is you can change each map type to use a different format if you want. If you want to change the bit depth, you can manually just do that by selecting these little drop downs, and then you can select various bit depths. If you want to change all of them to be one format, all you've got to do is go down to this here, this little drop down in the global export, and then pick a format, and it will automatically propagate across the entire row and automatically propagate the correct bit depths. And you can also change all the bit depths to be the same by clicking a bit depth here. So if you wanted them all to be TIFF, you just click TIFF and it automatically selects them, and everything propagates correctly. We've got an export path here. Now this export path is actually mirrored over to the main tab here as well. So to choose an export path, which is where your images will be exported to, you just click this little button here and then click select folder. And then it'll give you the file path here, which will be mirrored over here. So if you don't have to go into the export and in the export tab and then change every time, you could just do the same thing in here, and it will propagate over to the export tab. we added the export path here so people can save. So if you want to use one export path for all of your projects, then you just go into this and then hit save configuration. We've got export normal derivative from color to normal now. This is relevant for our color to normal mode, and this allows you to export either the integrated color to normal map or the actual one that's automatically generated when you load. We've got preferences here. We've got an axis swizzle. Now this is your standard flip green. Shows here the current axis configuration that Knald is using. By default, Knald uses plus Y, which is for the green channel. If your engine uses minus Y, then you can click this and you can save, and it will always be persistent whenever you load Knald. We've got another one in the main tab here, which is flip green. Now this is on a per project basis, so if you're just doing one texture that you need flip green to be checked, then you can check that and it won't affect the one that's in the preferences. But if you want the green channel to be set a particular way every time you load Knald, then you would select this and it tells you which one it's using, and then you can select that and use it for all your projects. We've got prefix and suffix settings here. This allows you to enable a prefix or suffix to your maps. The prefix, this would be appended before the file name that you've the image that you've loaded, and the suffix would be appended after. You can pick one from the drop down here, or you can type in your own, and it will, if you save it, it will store your custom configuration. And you can do the same with height. So you've got all these choices here. So if you want one to be there, to be displacement, then it's displacement. If you want normal to be DDN, then you can change to DDN, and so on. So once you've changed this, you just click save, and then it will store your configuration. We've got a 3D preview here. I'll go into the 3D preview in more detail in a second, but this basically changes the up axis for any mesh that you load. So you can have Z as up or Y as up, which is useful. We've got enable gamma correction on the specular. Now, some engines use gamma correction on specular and some don't, so this allows you to get a more accurate preview of what it would look like in your engine. We've got a use per vertex tangent space. We've got a miscellaneous group here, so you can, on export, you can pack displacement into the alpha of the norm map. We've got use alpha by default. Now we use alphas in a very special way in Knald. Whenever you load an image with an alpha channel, anything that is black in the alpha channel will be rendered as 100% flat. So this can give you cleaner results. You can use a custom alpha, or you can just use one that is generated when you render, but we would always recommend that you use this where possible because it does give much better results. And we've got enabled tooltips, so unchecking this obviously disables the tooltips or enables them depending on whether you need to know what a particular feature does. If you hover over any particular feature, as you've probably seen, it gives you a tooltip. So depending on whether or not you need these, you can enable or disable them. You can click save, which will save the configuration that you've got, so when you load Knald, these settings will be retained. In the main tab, this is where most of the grunt work is done. When you're working on your textures, or your controls will show up here, and the controls are context sensitive, so if you have an ambient occlusion map or a concavity or convexity map, then their controls will show up here, but only the relevant controls will show up, so the interface isn't cluttered. So if you load a map integrated and then click the ambient occlusion tab, the settings for concavity and convexity will not show, only the ambient occlusion, and if you want to change the convexity, you click the tab and then it will show up. This is just a cool way to keep everything as clean and minimalistic as possible. We've got a bump scale here which decides the global strength of the processed normal and derivative maps, which we'll go into in a second. We've got tileable, so if your map's tileable you just check this and it will retain contiguous values and make sure that your map doesn't get any sort of seam, as the alpha channels I displayed before. And the flip green. You've got 3 buttons here which are to load your images. There's shortcuts for each of these, so if you want to load a NOR map you can just click this button and it will load a map, or you can press Control O and that will load a NOR map. Then Heightmap is Control Shift O and then load a colour map, which is called to normals, which is Control Alt O. You can show and hide the 3D preview window here by clicking this button. So you can just hide it or show it at will. Now the 3D preview, we've got a few modes for this. So you can have it as a floating window. So if you want to maximize your screen space, your real estate when you're using Knald, you can have this and put it onto a separate monitor if you've got 2 monitors. Or you can dock it into the side here. And then adjust the size to your liking. You can just drag it off, or you can press these little buttons here. So you can drag it off, and you can also dock it onto the left as well, depending on what you prefer. So we've got 3 modes there that you can use. I prefer it to be over to the right. The 3D preview window has got a few options here, which we've got. Load diffuse, you can load specular, you can load a mesh. We've got a bunch of lighting presets here. We've got parallax. When you load diffuse or specular, these boxes will come enabled, and you can enable or disable them at will. We've got a specular intensity to change the specular intensity, and you can also do it by this pin box here. And we've got a gloss which you can change as well, and a reset UVs. So if you tile UVs, you can just reset. We've got 5 different views here, so you can view lighting, Heightmap, Ambient Occlusion, Concavity or Convexity. We've got a cylinder, a sphere, a plane or a low BJ. This is the tessellation level, because the 3D preview in Knald is fully tessellated when using primitives. We've got tessellation level here as well, so you can change the tessellation level, and obviously this will change, or you can do it via this spin box. We've got the UV tile, which you can increase or decrease. We've got a very nice parallax solution here, which is very, very cool. Looks really, really nice. So if you don't want to use tessellation, you can always enable this, and it will give you an approximation of the magnitude of your displacement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up a NOR map here and then explain some of these other features. So we'll just click load normal here, and then we'll go into our assets folder, and I will load up this mountain range here, and the texture integrates. And integration is really fast, so this has taken just over 5 seconds. As you can see here, the map is the 3D preview is fully tessellated. The tessellation is based on a value of 1 pixel per polygon when using a plane. So on a 2K map this would be just over 4 million pixels when it's at level 7. And each time you reduce the tessellation level, it reduces the polygon count in the screen, so you can get a broad range depending on what you want. And you can use parallax, which is a really, really nice parallax solution. So if you click parallax here, the displacement will essentially look the same, but the silhouette around the edge will change. So that's pretty cool. So you can get a good approximation of what the tessellation will look like if you don't want to actually use tessellation. And obviously this is just a plane because it's parallaxed. You can change the specular intensity here. So if you prefer a high specular, you can change that. And then obviously you can have gloss up to 256. So you can change whatever's preferable for you for that. To rotate the mesh in the 3D preview, you hold down the left mouse button, and that allows you to rotate. To change the lighting, you just rotate the lights by holding the right mouse button, and to offset the UVs you hold down middle mouse button and offset here. So you can offset in any way you want. Now it looks like this mesh is rotating, but it's actually not. This is actually the UVs that are rotating. So if I go into a plane and then as I do this, you can see that the mesh isn't actually rotating, it's the UVs that are offsetting. To reset these, we've got a nice fast solution. Basically we've set it up so that if you double click the button that was used to perform the action, it will reset. So in the case of this, if I rotate it around and I rotate the lights and then I offset the UVs, if I double click the left mouse button, it will reset the rotation. Double click the right mouse button will reset the lights, and then double click the middle mouse button will reset the offset UVs. So you can just double click nice and quick and it resets, which is super fast. So just to go over that again. It resets everything nice and quickly there, so you can get a fast reset. You can also toggle UVs by using these little buttons here, and you can reset by pressing reset UVs, or you can use the numpad plus and minus, and you can pretty much keep on offsetting the UVs as many times as you like, and then just reset with a click, which is really, really cool. Okay, so now to go a little bit more into the integrator. The integrator is an integral part of Knald, and you can get some really, really cool results from this. It generates brilliant height maps. So I'm just going to load another texture up here. I'm going to load this rubble texture here, which E3D have kindly provided us. And it integrates in 5 seconds. Now this tessellation is directly taken from the Heightmap here. So what you see in the 3D preview will be exactly what is in the 2D preview here. Now the max iterations, now this value is the maximum number of iterations. Knald won't necessarily use the full value here, so if you set this at 300, if you can see down here, we've got a convergent points of 257. So basically what that means is that Knald has processed the norm map, and then it's decided that 257 is the best value. If we bring this slider up here, it will continue from where we left off, and it's given us a value of 474. If I bring this down, it will find that 68 is the best, then 146, etc. So that's what the maximum iteration slider does. 300 should be good for most situations, but you can always bring this up to a 500 if you choose. We've got content derivative slider here. So basically, the further towards derivative you have the slider, it will try and preserve the slopes that are present in the norm map, and the closer you have it towards cont, it will try and retain close values between pixels. So if you have two values of a pixel that are pretty close together, it will try and preserve that over preserving the slope. Generally 8 is a good value for this, but you can get some decent results if you go lower. And if you notice, the displacement is much flatter because it's trying to retain the continuity between the values of the pixels. And we put it down to 1. You can see there's virtually no displacement here because it's trying to preserve the continuity. A value of 80 should be good in most situations. Planar rigidity, this is only active when there's an alpha map present in the texture. So what we'll do is we'll load up a map with an alpha channel. Let's use this one here. You can see this has got an alpha channel. So we'll load up that. And this basically reinforces the flatness of the texture. Sometimes you can get a slight bowing on some textures, and this will try and preserve the flatness. So we can just bump this up and it reintegrates, and you can see you get a different result here and a different convergence point. We've got a noise reduction option here. Let's load up the rubble texture again. Got a noise reduction here, so if we zoom in, you can zoom in the 3D preview, by the way, by either using your middle mouse button scroll, which gives you a coarse zoom, or you can hold Alt and then drag your mouse button up and down for a fine zoom. So if we go somewhere like this, and then we disable noise reduction, the texture, you can see that the texture is slightly noisier. If you enable noise reduction, then all the values are smoothed out slightly. The smooth basically does the same, but it's stronger. It's like a blur. So if you just want to blur slightly, then you've got that option. The scale of features basically is a quick select for the maximum iterations. So if you select small, it will go down to 80. If you select medium, it will be 150. And if you select large, it will be 300. We want to stay on 300, I think, for this test, because that should give you a decent result. The input map type, you've got a normal map or a derivative map, so depending on what you're using, you select this and then load your map and it will know exactly what you're trying to do. Okay, I just want to show you something to do with the alpha. So if we load this hunter mesh here, which is kindly provided by Warren, just select that here. And as it integrates. So basically what it is here is you can see that between the UV islands, and we've got, it's all nice and flat. If we disable alpha, then you can see that because it's taken the entire NOR map into account, then it can be quite blobby in some areas. If you're using a tileable texture, this doesn't really matter unless you want to use the alpha for a specific effect. But you can see that the result isn't as nice. If you click alpha here, everything becomes nice and flat. Okay, so over to some of these other tabs here. So we've got the NOR map that was automatically generated. We've got the derivative map. We've got concavity, which is a cavity map. And we've got convexity, and we've got ambient occlusion here. The ambient occlusion solution we've got is really nice. It's equivalent to a bake of about 600 or 700 rays in other programs, and it's all changeable in real time, and obviously you can view it in the 3D preview here, and it's all in real time, so that's really nice. We've got concavity here, which is a cavity map, which is also viewable in real time and changeable. So we can just change the blur amount here. We've got stabilization, which is stabilization on a per pixel basis. Now you don't necessarily have to have this on 3. It's basically whatever looks best, depending on what you're using. And then we've got the cavity scale here, which just increases the strength, as you can see, and it's all viewable in the 3D preview in real time and adjustable in real time. So we've got convexity, which is like a highlight, highlights the edges. We've got a blur amount, so we can blur in real time. We've got a stabilization, and we've got a contrast, which changes the strength of the map, and you can get some really nice effects. Just play around with these. Now, one thing we tried to make sure of when we were developing these maps was that you wouldn't be required to edit them in Photoshop that much. Usual thing with using a cavity map is you get this grey map with both the convexity and the concavity in one map, and you have to add levels or brightness and contrast, and it's time consuming and unnecessary really. We develop these maps so you can use them directly, so you export them and then you can just multiply or screen or do whatever you want, and you should get a decent result immediately. Just going to load up this rubble map to show you the ambient occlusion once more. You can also control the 2D preview in Knald by using a middle mouse button to pan, and then a left mouse button for a fine zoom. You can get some really, really stunning results if you use this with the concavity and convexity maps, which I will show you. I will just put this on, say 150, and then I'll adjust the concavity. That looks fine, and the convexity, that looks great as well. So to export, you can press. You can either go up to here and then click export, export all, or you can just press the export button and that will export. And once this is exported, we can just open up these maps in Photoshop here, and what you can do is you can get the 3 different maps, copy them over, and as I was saying before, you can just multiply or screen these straight away. So we just select our concavity map here and then go to multiply, and then go to select our convexity map and go to screen, and as you can see it makes a big difference. And then obviously you can adjust the opacity, so you can get like a really, really great looking map here, all generated from a null map, so that looks fantastic. Now, another really cool thing we've got in Knald is low poly ambient occlusion. Now this is, I just load up the Hunter map again. And then you can click load OBJ. So if I go to the ambient occlusion, you can see that the ambient occlusion, while it looks really, really nice, there's no direct occlusion. This is more of the sort of thing that you would get if you used an exploded bake, which is fantastic, but it's not always ideal. And we thought it would be really nice to have a fast, robust solution for giving occlusion. So basically what we can do is, by checking this low poly ambient occlusion box here, this will generate occlusion based off a low poly mesh. It says low poly, but you can actually use up to a couple of million polygons if you choose. So if your high poly is around that sort of number, then you can use that. So what you can do is just click the low poly ambient occlusion, and then it generates off 512 rays, and obviously there's your result. Now that completed in only a few seconds, 3 seconds or so, and you can see it does make quite a big difference. The maximum currently available is 8,192 rays, so you can always go higher. And then go to 4096. and that generated in 26 seconds, and as you can see, it looks really great. Now you can, when you export textures from Knald, it exports exactly what's in the 3D preview here. So if you wanted to have more control, you can always disable the low poly AO, export the image-based ambient occlusion, and that will just export this, and you could rename it, and then you could bring down the scale for the low poly AO, for the image-based AO, and then just export the low poly AO, rename that, and then merge them together in Photoshop. Or you can just export like this. And you can get some really nice results. I'll just export these. Press Ctrl E and double export. And export was completed, so we can just grab these three maps here and do the same as we did before, so you can get a good idea of the quality that we can provide. And, select this to multiply, and then select the convexity to screen, and as you can see, you get a really convincing ambient occlusion. There you go. So it looks really nice. You can view all of these modes on imported meshes. So obviously we've got the lighting, we've got a Heightmap, got ambient occlusion, concavity and convexity. Don't forget also you can have parallax on characters too, on imported meshes too, and obviously you can change the specular intensity and the gloss. Also you can load up textures which will be automatically turned on, and you can disable any of them if you choose, so you can get like a decent representation of the sort of thing that you might get in your engine. To help speed up any sort of workflow. You can change the lighting presets and move them around. And then reset them as you choose. As I mentioned before, all the controls in Knald are context sensitive, so if you have an ambient occlusion here, we'll just turn on ambient occlusion so you can see it. You have ambient occlusion here. When you click concavity, the ambient occlusion box disappears, and the same with convexity. So whenever you select a tab, it will show only the relevant controls. I want to show you a little bit as well about opening up a Heightmap here. So to open up a Heightmap, you click Load Height, or you can use the shortcut which is Control-Shift-O. So we'll just open up this Heightmap here, and there's no integration required. When you load a Heightmap, everything is automatically generated. So the instant we load, we have a normal, a derivative, ambient occlusion, we have concavity and convexity. And obviously they're still all viewable in the 3D preview. But you still have control, real-time control over ambient occlusion, concavity, and convexity. So if you already have a Heightmap and you want to use our tools, you can just load it in and you can get everything that you want really quickly. We've got a load color map here. Now this is our color to normals mode. It might be a little bit different from the usual way that people generate normal maps from photographs or height maps, but I'll take you through the steps here. So basically what you do is you click load color map, and for color maps you can use photographs or you can use height maps. So we'll just click this here and it generates our normal map instantly. Now everything in this is controllable in real time. So you've got the intensity here, so you can make it as strong as you want. We've got sliders, so you can change the extra fine, medium, large and extra large details. So you just play around with this until you get something that you like. So something like this is fine. And if you notice that you're stuck on the normal tab, this is because no integration has been performed. So basically what you need to do to generate the ambient occlusion, concavity, convexity, you just need, and the Heightmap, you just need to click update integrate here and it will process the texture through the integrator. And then once that's done, you have all your other maps again that you might want to use. Now if you decide that perhaps it's not looking exactly the way you want it to, say maybe it's a little bit too strong, you can either click this button to return to color to normal mode, or you can just drag a slider and it will take you back straight away. So then you can edit, say you don't want it to be as strong, and then you click update integrator again to update your settings, and then to continue working with your other maps that you've got here. We've got this invert button here. Now basically what this does is it inverts the values of your map, your imported map. So if you click it here you can see that what was once convex is now concave, and the controls work in the same way, but the intensity is reversed. So if something was a white value previously, it will now be the opposite. So we click update integrator. This is not the same as using a flip green, by the way. As you can see, where these were white before, they're now black. So basically your source map has been inverted, so you can perhaps get some different results, very usable results. Okay, so I'm going to load up another height map to give you a preview. So we've loaded up a height map here, and as you can see, everything has automatically been generated. And again, all these are all controllable in real time. Now, to talk a little bit more about the info tab here. Now we've got the image information. As I said before, this shows a thumbnail of each channel, and you can see this here. This has got this height map. It's a 16-bit height map, and it's got 55,447 unique values of information in the red channel here. And it's a grayscale image, so there's only one channel. It tells you it's 16 bits here and the file size. If we load up a normal map, say we've got this 8-bit normal map here, wait for it to integrate a second. We click over to the info tab. You can see this number here has been vastly reduced. This is 256, which is the maximum that an 8-bit image can support. But if we load up exactly the same normal map, but a 16-bit version, you can see that this value jumps significantly. We've almost maxed out 16-bit range here with 64,905. But as you can see, using an 8-bit texture, you're really limiting what you can do. I really wouldn't recommend using 8-bit texture when working with Knald. It's best to retain as much precision as you can, as we do all our calculations in double or single precision floating point, so we retain an awful lot of precision. Our import and export code is extremely accurate, so you can always load up. We would definitely recommend that you work in 16-bit and then export later as 8-bit, so you can retain as much fidelity as possible. I'd like to thank you for watching this introduction to Knald. I hope you all have some great fun using it, and it would be great to hear what you think. See you next time.